DWI cases are probably one of the fastest growing cases now. I mean, you can't go to a cocktail party and talk to anyone who hasn't either been arrested for a DWI or knows a family member or friend who's been arrested for a DWI. It's you know, it's kind of like fishing in a fish tank. I mean, what do they do in these kinds of cases? All right, they have undercover operations, and basically what happens is they have a unit that's set up basically to combat drunk driving cases. All right, so they put guys in unmarked cars, and they go to the busiest areas in Queens, Nassau, and Manhattan, and they sit in their car outside of the popular bars. And they wait for the guys to walk out, or the women to walk out of the bar, go to their car, all right, get in their car, and then drive off. All right? So now they've watched this happen, and they start to follow the vehicle. They make a right, they make a left, maybe they don't make a full stop, they do make a full stop, they fail to signal, but at some point, after about a quarter to a half a mile, the red lights are going to go on, they're going to pull the vehicle over to the side, and they're going to approach your vehicle. And the first thing they're going to say to you is, where are you coming from? And it's a setup question, right? Because if you tell them that you're coming from a bar, the next question is going to be, did you have anything to drink? Well, who goes to a bar and doesn't have anything to drink? So of course now you're driving, you're admitting that you've had something to drink. So what's the next question? How many did you have to drink? Now here, what are you going to say? I had 7 beers? That's not going to satisfy anything. You're going to say you had nothing to drink? You're going to have 1 beer? Most people say what? I had 1 or 2 beers. Well, they've heard that excuse for years, and they know that that's not going to fly, okay? Now, if you tell them that, well, I'm coming from visiting my friend, now they know you're lying because they just saw you walk out of the bar. So there's no surprise there. So either way, at this point, you're going to be asked to provide your license and registration, and at some point you're probably going to be asked to step out of the car. And the lights are shining, and right now your adrenaline is going through the roof, and you don't know what to do, all right? And what I tell people is, look, the first thing you need to do when this happens to you, if you can, is to be polite to the police officer. Don't start to argue with the police officer. When the officer asks you for your license and registration, give him your license and your registration, okay? Cooperate with him. But to the extent he asks you how much you've been drinking, number one, I would suggest that you don't answer those questions because there's nothing good that's going to come of it. When the officer's observing you at that time, he's basically going to make observations as to, one, whether you have bloodshot eyes, slurred speech, and you have a smell of alcohol on your breath. Every criminal court complaint has those 3 things in it, all right? And they're then going to ask you to step out of the car. And when they ask you to step out of the car, they're going to ask you to perform certain coordination tests to see whether or not you're so blotto that you couldn't operate this car, all right? And they may also ask you to take a portable breathalyzer test, which is a little device that they have at the scene, which they'll ask you to blow into to see whether or not you register a high level or not. But in all likelihood, if you've had anything to drink, you are going to be arrested, whether you take the test or you don't take the test. And one of the common questions that people ask me all the time when I'm at a cocktail party is, you know, Mr. Aiello, if I'm out and I have a couple of drinks and I get stopped by the police, what should I do? Should I take the test? Now, there's no simple answer to this, but what I tell my clients is, if you're involved in an accident and someone is seriously injured, do not take the test. If you're involved in an accident and someone's died, do not take the test. All right? So in those circumstances, you never take the test. Accident with serious injury or accident with death. Do not take the test. Now, when you're back at the precinct and they're asking you whether you want to take the test, All right, you need to understand certain things. If you refuse to take the test under New York law, the Department of Motor Vehicles, because driving is a privilege and it's not a right, they can take your license away from you for refusing to take the test up for 1 year. Now, you're entitled to a hearing at the Department of Motor Vehicles within 15 days, but until that 15-day period hearing, you are not going to be allowed to drive. And if you lose at the hearing, you're not going to have your license for the next year. So, if you decide to take the test or not take the test, it's very important to know whether to do that or not. Ideally, if you're able to reach out to an attorney who's a friend, family member, or whatever, and get their advice, that would be helpful. Usually at 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning when you're getting stopped, you're not going to have access to someone at that point. And you're going to have to make the decision on your own as to whether to take the test or not. And what it's important to understand is if you refuse to take the test, your license is automatically going to be revoked for up to 1 year. Now, do you take the test? It's a difficult assessment, but here's what I generally say to people. If you can tell me that you were in the bar or the restaurant and you had 2, 3, 4 drinks over the course of an evening, you shared a bottle of wine with your girlfriend, your wife, your partner. If you had a cocktail and then you had 2 glasses of wine and maybe an after dinner drink over the course of 4 hours, I would say take the test. But if you've been in there pounding shots, you know, one after the other, and you know your blotto, and that if you take that test, you're registering off the chart, don't take the test, because it's not going to do you any good. Because under our law, if you blow above a 0.18%, which is a very high level, but you can get at that level if you're an alcoholic or you're someone that drinks on a regular basis. If you get to that level, you're going to be charged with aggravated driving while intoxicated, which is going to put you in a whole nother level in terms of what the penalties could be and the potential for going to jail. So at that point, you'd probably want to refuse. But if you could honestly say to yourself, look, I had a couple of drinks tonight, and I'm fine operating this motor vehicle. I didn't have an accident, and I feel pretty good, and I can pass these coordination tests, then I would say take the test. Because in all likelihood, you will probably blow either below the legal limit of 0.08% or perhaps above it, maybe 0.10, maybe 0.12. But if I'm representing you, and most other attorneys who do this for a living, they will be able to probably work out a deal for you. And that deal will involve a plea to something less than driving while intoxicated. All right? Because if you plead to driving while intoxicated, that's a crime. And our goal is to always avoid a criminal conviction for our client, so that this way, if they have to fill out an application for a license, they can truthfully say they've never been convicted of a crime. So if you're charged with a DWI offense, driving while intoxicated, our goal typically, unless we're fighting the case where, you know, we don't think they can prove the case against you beyond a reasonable doubt, but if you come to me and you say, look, Mr. Aiello, I was drinking, I was driving, I had probably too much to drink, all right? I made a mistake, but, you know, I don't want it to ruin my life. What can you do for me here? Well, in that case, you know, after our thorough investigation and after we determine that, you know what, they can probably prove your guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, maybe you want to look into seeing if we can work out a fair disposition for you. And if we can get you a driving while ability impaired, which is a violation and not a crime, that would be a good result for you, because you're not going to have a criminal conviction. We can get you a conditional license, which will allow you to be able to drive to and from work, and your life won't be that badly impacted. Your insurance premium may go up in the short term, but again, you know, it won't have the disastrous effect that it would have if you were convicted of driving while intoxicated, which is a crime and not a violation.